Welcome back. Still taking your phone calls, 412-575-2600 on the Bordas & Bordas hotline. Let's go to Westview. Harry's on the line. Harry, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, guys, enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Hey, my point is, like Paul was just talking about the numbers. How can you have a team that has 81 games like the Penguins and have a payroll of what do they have, about $80 million? And then you have the Pirates with a payroll of about, what, $100 or $90 million, and you're playing 80 more games? I just don't understand the figures, how they line up.
It's an entirely different salary structure and revenue sharing and everything else. And there's a salary cap in hockey, and there's a salary floor. I can go on, but there's a lot of different details, a lot of different cogs in that wheel.
Yeah, but to his
I see where you're going with it,
point,
you know, a lot of different cogs in that wheel.
If you look at it to his point, you know, there are teams that spend far more than $80 million, whatever the salary cap is in the NHL, in baseball.
That's true. Now
they choose not to spend more.
Where I'm going with this is that you're going to find teams that pay that in hockey because they have to. That's the difference.
Right.
They have to.
But the Penguins do because they want to.
Well, the Penguins do because they want to. I'm talking about just about every other team in the NHL.
Yeah.
Still
I think he was trying to roundabout way compare the Penguins to the Pirates, which is just not. They're two different organizations with two different mentalities.
Which is exactly what I'm getting at. It's kind of pointless.
But I think their mentalities are different. Like I think if you took a guy like Jim Rutherford and put him in the Pirates, he would wheel and deal and try and do whatever. Even if he doesn't have the resources, he would still try and wheel and deal, and he wouldn't be afraid to trade prospects and try, because that's who he is. That's the personality of the Penguins. That's the way he does things. I think I say this all the time. You could take Neil Huntington and give him the Yankees, and he would still do things the way he does, because he is far too conservative and far too concerned about prospects, one, and two, he's far too concerned about who he's giving away in a trade as opposed to who he's getting back.
You're answering the other side of the question I was about to ask. If there was a Jim Rutherford type with the Pirates, I would expect the same thing. But if you flip the situations, you put Jim Rutherford with the bad roster, Neil Huntington with the good one, and you wouldn't answer that question. But I can't even.
No, I mean with money. I'm talking about people.
Same thing.
Yeah, right. People talk about Neil Huntington, and there are obviously restraints salary-wise.
Absolutely.
But you could give him the Cubs or the Red Sox or the Yankees salary or money, and he would operate the same way, because he's very, very, very conservative when it comes to trading prospects. His philosophy on trades is, I'm a lot more concerned about who I'm giving away than who I'm getting. His philosophy is, I want to have a good team over 5 years. I'd rather do that than have a great team for 1 year, a really good team for the second year, and then 3 years of a bad team. And that's just his philosophy.
And to further your point, think about the team that Theo Epstein took over. Think about what they became in 5 years.
Right.
And think about who he drafted: Schwarber, Baez, drafted Ian Happ, he drafted Chris Bryant. Trades for Rizzo, trades for Russell, trades for Arrieta, trades for Pedro Strop. Just made a series of fantastic moves that switched around the franchise that quickly because he made the right move. And he had a better mindset.
And when they were ready to win, he went out and of course, he had the money to do it. But I don't think Neil Huntington would do this kind of thing, because people, these are tough, really bad contracts. He went out and got Lackey and Lester and those guys, and he just said, you know what, we're going to have basically, a $90 or $100 million starting pitching staff or whatever it was, because we want to win.
And honestly, when you have that kind of rotation that you can add on because everything else is already in place. I was explaining this to somebody. That lineup that they have now, if you take out Hayward, you take out Zobrist, the rest of that lineup, they can still start 8 guys for the next 3 years. Right. Because they built it that well.
Yeah.
That's the difference, honestly, because what has Theo Epstein built with and what has Neil Huntington built with? There's 2 first-round picks on this roster. Jameson Taillon and Austin Meadows. The only 2. Theo Epstein's got 5 right now. That makes the difference in how you build a team on top of the decisions that you make that are both good and bad.
Exactly. And that's the point. I think it's a philosophy that, both general managers have different philosophies.
We got to take a break. We'll get more into that when we come back. Stay with us.